Hello and welcome to this special FanFiAddict author interview. I'm your host, Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, author of New Yesterday, Times Ellipse, and A Stitch Between Worlds. And for the very first time, I have joining me a co-host for FanFiAddict. It is the
Hello.
Greek goddess of book reviewing. It is
Oi.
Eleni Argyro. So,
Hola.
Eleni, how's it going?
Hello. I'm good. You? It's a lovely evening here in Italy.
Um, Yeah, it's very dark where I am. There was snow on the ground, but it has not it's just black out there. I don't know if it's still there. Who knows? It's a mystery. Um, we have joining us an amazing author. Um, Absolutely fantastic first book of The Immortality Thief, and her latest book, The Unkillable Princess, is coming out very, very soon. It is the incredible Taran Hunt. Taran, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's bright and snowy where I am, so.
I love it. Look, bright and snowy. That is
Mm,
that sounds like two cats to me. Like bright and snowy. That's exactly
I
what
could
that
see that.
sounds like it should be.
I could see that. I
Yeah.
think snowy would have to be a black cat. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And probably bright as well, to be honest. Like
Yeah, that would. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So for everybody who's tuning in live, thank you for joining us. Feel free to post your questions in the comments, post comments, say hi, check in. We'll try and include as many of them in the chat as we can. But we're here mainly to talk about Taran and her writing and her books and get to know her a little bit better. So, yeah, any questions like that would
Beautiful.
be very, very, very welcome. And it's especially good that we've got Eleni here because Eleni is like the biggest super fan of Taran's books in the world. So I know
I
that
have
we're
been.
gonna
Yes.
basically, if Eleni is acting out too much, just please tell us in the comments so that we can.
Hey,
No,
I'm a
don't stop her.
professional nerd.
Encourage her.
Well, with that introduction, I'm going to ask my first question.
All right.
So, what is your author origin story? What got you into writing and all of that jazz?
Oh, author origin story. I wrote a bunch of, when I was a very small child, I really liked unicorns. It's not a very original origin story, but I wrote all these little flip books with like these diagrams of like the weirdest looking unicorns you've ever seen, and stories about how like they went to the waterfall and drank water and then fought a monster to the death. Um, and I think my grandmother has passed now, but I think she had those in her possession as a blackmail material until the end. Um, and then I just wrote since I was a little kid. My mother's an author, so I got to see what it was like to be an author, which is an interesting experience. And I just kept writing. So
Those sound like some hardcore unicorns, which is very fair considering what they are.
yeah, stab people with their horns. It's got a weapon on there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Imagine having a weapon on your head your entire life. It would be exhausting, right? It'd be like
Well,
you'd be so sick of people viewing you as a danger. You'd just be walking into a room like, guys, seriously, it's okay, it's all right.
I'm gonna
We don't
bend
give them
down.
enough cred for that.
Yeah,
well, then again,
So
goats exist and we don't see them as a danger, even though we should. So, yeah,
I see them
it's
as
sad.
dangerous. I don't like their eyes. They've got the square pupil, the rectangular pupils. I don't trust that.
They can be shifty.
They're shifty. Yeah, they're shifty.
They can sense weakness
yeah,
Yeah. You seem to have personal experiences with ghosts.
more than I would like. I have met my fair share of goats, and they have been violent.
I'm so sorry.
so is your mum also an SFF writer, Taryn, or does she write in a different genre? And what like drew you to SFF?
She writes romance novels and
Ooh.
women's fiction, so very little overlap there. But I really like sci-fi and fantasy, which are like two sides of the same coin. I was definitely more of a fantasy child. See unicorns, and then and then I got really into physics and went to college for physics. Got my degree in physics, and then sort of from that really liked science fiction because then I could merge the two things I liked.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to come back and ask you about your physics degree later on. But first, for everybody who's tuning in, let's just start out by telling them a little bit about the books that you've written. So, will you pitch your series, The Immortality Thief and the Unkillable Princess, and then will you pitch them in Sean's voice? Because I would love to hear Sean describing these books.
In Sean's voice. Oh, that's
And
going to
and side notes from Indigo and Tamara would be also excellent.
I'll see if I can get into their characters. So the Immortality Thief and the Unkillable Princess are about a very talented linguist who is a very terrible smuggler named Sean. And in the first book, he gets blackmailed into searching for the secret of immortality on a not so abandoned spaceship, where he meets people, since it's not very abandoned, and runs away from monsters. There's a little bit of fighting monsters, but there's a lot of running away, at least on Sean's part. And then Unkillable Princess sort of continues from that. It's the larger consequences of having found the secret to immortal life, called the Philosopher's Stone. And also the fact that Sean has gotten a message from his sister, who he has thought dead for 8 years. And he doesn't know if it's really his sister or if it's one of the many people he has pissed off in his very annoying life, trying to like lure him out of hiding. Okay. Let's see.
I would say side
Just
note, but
before
without
you
saying
start
minor
on Sean's-
spoilers for
Minor spoilers.
for Immortality Thief.
Oh yeah, minor
Yeah.
spoilers. Jess, we want to say hi to Jess. Jess has asked if, for Indigo's point of view, you can do the summary using a light source. That would be absolutely ideal.
Well, I don't have one on hand, but I can use. Here we go.
Oh, no spoilers, Taran.
Just catch that. Everybody, cover your screens. Don't look at that.
Close your eyes.
Yes, from Sean's point of view, it's probably sound very much like me. Be like, so I got caught. I mean, not really caught. It's more like it's this whole thing. It doesn't matter. And so they dump me on this ship. It's this huge ship, really big ship, and we land, and then some ministers showed up. I'm not sure they found us. And so I had to talk my way out with them, and then we're trying to go, and then it would go on like that for like 4 more hours, is how the Sean description would go. He talks a lot. And then Tamara's would be very straightforward. It would be like, got on a ship, got marooned, found the Philosopher's Stone, left my country.
I like it.
Had to deal with a person too stupid to live.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I haven't killed him yet.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, that's perfect. And you already gave us Indigo, so yeah, that's 3 for 3, Taran. That's amazing. It's awesome. The one thing that you forgot to say is that it's an amazing sort of story. You didn't add enough
You're right.
adjectives as to how awesome these books are.
It's actually the best book ever written.
That is.
Yeah, ever.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. Eleni, if you talk to Eleni, you will genuinely believe that after about 5 seconds of how enthusiastic she is about these books.
And not a
It's
single lie
amazing.
will have been told.
I like you.
Yeah.
I like the way you think. I think it was the first giveaway that these books are amazing, are the chapter titles. Because they are, and we were talking about Frasier, and they're definitely from Sean's point of view.
Oh,
So
yeah.
whenever things are progressing or degenerating, and the chapter titles are mirroring that, and I wanted you to tell us a bit more about that, especially in regard, even with the second book, when there are certain very drunk scenes. And
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was
everything is
actually
reflected
one of my
throughout.
favorite parts.
It's very dear to my heart.
Yes, I'll just say there's a part in Unkillable Princess, no spoilers, where 2 of the characters have gone through a lot of terrible things in a very short period of time. And they end up at the end of this terrible experience outside of a bar. And so what are they going to do but go get drunk? Which is, of course, a terrible idea because everyone finds them there. So they're drunk off their asses and engaging very unwillingly in political intrigue and running from the cops, ultimately. And I'm not going to spoil who those people are, but one of them is Sean, the main character. And that was one of my favorite parts of that book to write. But all the chapter titles are increasingly poor alcohol puns, I believe. Yes. Because writing chapter titles is not my favorite thing, because either I'm just going to go chapter 1, 2, 3, or I want to find something that sort of summarizes. It's like titling a short story almost. But in Unkillable Princess and Immortality Thief, there's so many chapters because they're very short. And I got tired of making serious chapter titles. And so I just started describing them as Sean would, if Sean were reading his own book, would describe what the hell happened in that scene. And
they're perfect. And I didn't even do this on purpose. I swear, I literally just grabbed the book and opened the page wanting to look for something. But I just opened chapter 37, some fresh bullshit. And it's just, I think it's probably my favorite chapter title ever. Ever. Because it was also with the progression of the story and everything, it was just, that's exactly what you think. And just chef's kiss, honestly.
Yes.
That's all I have to say.
Too many monsters.
Baby teeth. Mm.
One of the things that I was curious about is the genre switch up that I felt that there was between Immortality Thief and Unkillable Princess, because the Immortality Thief is just like, it's got this horror, like locked room suspense sort of, aspect to it. Mm-hmm. And then in the Unkillable Princess, you really lean into like the comedy action heist style of like this wider world that you get to play in. And, it's not, you can go different places, you can do different things, but you also bring a lot more humor into it. And I was just, it's kind of like a spy thriller. I was thinking, like, how much fun was it sort of leaning into the comedy aspect and being able to explore and doing something different, as opposed to being stuck on a spaceship for an entire book?
Yes, that was it was definitely a deliberate choice to sort of switch up the genre a little bit, because I feel like with sequels you want to give people a little bit of the same thing but also a little bit of something different, and the characters and the tone I wanted to keep very similar, but I mean, the first book, they're locked on a single location the entire time. It would be incredible bad luck for these three characters to find themselves locked in another location for 400 pages again. So I sort of knew that just in terms of keeping things going, I needed to put them someplace where they had a little bit more freedom of travel. I, instead of going for like a Tomb Raider thing, I went for more of a spy movie thing. Is exactly what it was. I ended up watching a bunch of spy movies, which was fun. And it was just, the humor was really good because every time I would get stuck on something, in the first book, every time I got stuck on a scene, I would be like, just throw a new monster in there. Just pick what's the most horrifying thing you could see in this situation and then put it in Sean's face. And so that's why you get like children with too many teeth that are trying to eat him. And in the second book, it was more like, okay, whenever I get stuck, what is the most ridiculous thing that can happen here to keep things interesting and to keep things moving? So that's sort of how I use the humor in the second book.
Just building aggravation after aggravation.
Exactly. I just like pissing them off, I think there is one part where Sean actually catches Indigo doing this. I'm like, yeah, that was me.
The most emotion ever. Things are really, really dire at that point.
Exactly. The most emotion he shows.
And also, I really like the progression, as you said, that you've made between book 1 and book 2. And the fact that they were stuck on the spaceship for that whole amount of time and however long Tamara was in it. And then that you also took a lot of care to show the after effects of all of that, not only plot-wise, but on the characters themselves. So, for instance, Tamara's reaction to confined spaces now and people and everything, and that was very, very well done. And you have so many small character moments like this that we both really loved, and which you would say they're to die for, I say they're to live for, because you live for these characters. And we also did something really, really good, which was, we always, all of the fluff moments between characters that readers or fans usually have to fanfic over or add and create stories about. You have those moments, and you take your time throughout the second book, to show these special moments between these characters, and they're building bonds and everything. And I want you to tell us a bit more how you went about that, how you decided, okay, this needs a little more fluff and things like that.
Well, in part because the book had so much humor, to me, what makes the humor work is the sincerity underneath it. Like Sean is joking all the time. He never shuts up. But underneath that is like a very, very deep sincerity. Like, he really loves these people. He really wants to be kind to strangers in a way that is sometimes not to his benefit. But he's really a very sincere person, aside from the fact that he's running his mouth and just saying things without thinking that it just come out. And so in the book itself too, because there's so many ridiculous situations, like they're constantly locked in rooms with spies while people are trying to shoot down the door. I wanted there to be something like stronger underneath it, sort of grounding that. And so like the relationship between Sean and the other characters, and like Tamara, who's sort of getting used to being in society again, and Indigo, who is having a long, slow mental breakdown over the course of the book. Sorry, Indigo. But because there's that sincerity between them, and I want people to believe in it, so that when the book does get ridiculous, you're not like, okay, sure, Taran, whatever. They're going to get drunk at the bar, but it's more like, of course they're getting drunk at the bar. They've been through some shit. I'm right there with you guys. So that I put those moments in so that you would feel the connection between the characters.
We definitely succeeded.
Thank you.
It's been 3 months. I'm still reeling. I'm fine.
I think that's the thing about the release that you get through the Unkillable Princess. Because there's all of this tension that brews up in the Immortality Thief, and with it being just in that one location, now they are free, they are out there, and it's almost like you get this sense of fun between them because you're playing with this bond that you've built really well. But balanced against that, it's not just sort of comedy. There's action, there's cool stuff that happens, there's spaceships, it's very, very cool. So I wanted to talk to you about how you balance all of your scientific background, knowing how spaceships work, versus making it fun. How did you go about sort of structuring those scenes and doing cool things with your physics background, as well as putting on a little bit of a cool play for the imagination?
I pick and choose what's physically possible. But like the solar systems where the story is set, which is the sister systems in Unkillable Princess anyway. In Immortality Thief, they're stuck on a spaceship. But the sister systems are based on real stars. And I did all little calculations because I think by what would one star look like from the other, because they're a binary star system, because I think that way you can find all sorts of interesting little details for what it would be like to live on one of these planets that wouldn't necessarily be obvious if you were just trying to make it up. So I used a little bit of it there. The spaceships are magic. They operate using magic functionally. They are not real spaceships. The laws of physics are not obeyed. relativity is abandoned. But no one needs to, you won't tell anybody, right? You'll tell people.
No.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, secret. Yeah.
I'm really bad at them,
Relativity.
so I wouldn't even know.
Relativity is just like, it's such a trope that's overdone these days. Who needs relativity? You know, it's just.
Einstein didn't know what he was talking about. There's no such thing as being all the way through. So.
Writer magic.
But also, I feel like if you know the reader will care if you tell them to care, and because I just sort of blaze past what the how the spaceships work. If I tried to explain it to you and I made something up, that would be worse.
I think it also helps that you say at some point that Sean flies a ship very effectively, if very badly, which is all you need to know, really.
It really is. Yes, it does help that the narrator himself doesn't know any physics whatsoever, or much math.
Go by instinct, it works.
Yeah. So even if I knew, Sean would not really be capable of explaining that.
There you go.
Reader.
What was really cool about it though is the way that you kind of played with the imagination, because you made the scene so easy to picture that it's almost like you're picturing it before you're actually thinking about whether it's real or not, because it was so well written. So I thought that the action scenes and all of those spaceship scenes, they were totally legit in my head. I think because the way you described them was so like in the moment there, you know. So I think, yeah, who needs Einstein when you've got a good description, right? Just before we move on to our next question, Taran, I want to just bring in Tom, who says hi. He says the Immortality Thief was awesome. Can't wait to read Unkillable Princess. He sends love to you, Taran, to his flashy boy Indigo, and to us too. Love you, Tom. So yeah,
Tom and I were talking about the book when we were both. He read it before me, and he told me, "You need to read this." And I jumped on it, and then we're like, "Our flashy boy," because you put him through a lot, Taran. And well, Tom doesn't know yet, but I know, and Frasier knows. Our flashy boy deserves better.
Poor flashy boy.
I interrupted. But as Frasier said, you bring everything, all of the imagery and all of the ideas, you bring them forth so clearly. And I think a lot of it, you have very specific details that we can all relate to very strongly. So I think that's what works best with your stories. And I'm thinking specifically sibling dynamics and also customs clearance. Because we know that Sean is a smuggler. We know that he doesn't really do great at it.
Yes.
But that whole customs scene, the moment very early on in the book, I think it sets the tone very nicely for the rest of the story. There's all of the little tiny details. And we just felt the need to ask, how many times have you tried to smuggle something to customs, Taran?
Nothing that I can admit.
Blink twice. Blink twice.
Turn off the live and we'll talk about it. But yeah, a lot of the times when I write things, I'll have an outline and then I'll start writing and I'll be like, wait, how is he going to get through that? And then a lot of my rewriting is I think of it as like going back and adding the pencil, because I'll like get to a scene and then like Sean will have to write something down. I'll be like, he doesn't have a pencil in his pocket. Why would he ever have a pencil in his pocket? And I'll have to go back up a couple chapters earlier and then find a reason for him to have a pencil in his pocket. Usually it's something more important than a pencil. But especially in the smuggling scenes, I was like, oh, and they're going to get through customs somehow. And I was like, but how? So I had to think really hard about how to smuggle things through a hypothetical spaceship.
Hypothetical.
Very hypothetical. Really hypothetical. Haven't been to 3 countries yet, so.
Fully expected to read in the acknowledgements, and thanks to Miles, who is based on this person, for
Miles. Thank you for letting me smuggle live fowl through security.
I feel like that's something that's really, really cool about your writing in general, Taran, is that like it's so relatable, and it is so it's so human in so many ways. And I kind of love that you carried that across from one book into the other. You said that you're a plotter, right? So you outline and then add. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you plot the? I mean, did you always know that the Unkillable Princess was going to be what it was when you started the Immortality Thief? Was that always the plan for these books, or was it?
No, it
Yeah,
was
tell
not.
us what the original plan was.
Well, I'm definitely a plotter, but I have to admit I'm less of a plotter for Sean, because I found that sometimes, especially in the early drafts, it's better to just like take him off the leash and let him run. Because he rambles, and sometimes if you just let him talk, he'll talk himself to a better plot point than whatever it is that I figured out. And so, which is infuriating as a plotter, because I'll have this nice, neat outline, and then I'll be like, doo-doo-doo-doo, and then I'll be like, wouldn't it be better if, and it's Sean's fault that happens, that then I have to abandon a significant portion of my outline. But I managed to sort of weaponize it in Unkillable Princess, which is that I would write the whole thing and then I'd go back and edit. And whenever I got to a part that didn't work, I would just be like, cut all this and improvise instead. And then I'd just sit down and see what happened. So I found a way to manage him. But this was not really the plan. I wasn't sure I wasn't sure that I would get a second book at first. I was very glad that I did. And then once it was bought, then I had to figure out what it was about, which I knew it would be about the sister, or, whoever it is that sent Sean the message, but largely about his relationship with his sister. I had sort of written rough outlines, but many of them I deleted, because I changed one thing and then the rest of them were null and void. So it was not originally designed to be like this. But I'm very glad it was. I liked it a lot.
Worked really well.
Thank you.
And stemming from that, from your editing, what's something that, as you were going through the editing process, that maybe you had to let go of, whether it's for world building or maybe a character moment? What was something that you had to just set aside for the moment or completely?
There were a bunch of scenes between Sean, Indigo, and Tamara that ended up getting cut. Like not full scenes, just more like brief sections of dialogue, because I was letting them talk to try to figure out what was interesting and what was not only interesting but also advanced the plot and the character arcs. And so I would occasionally have dialogues between them that was interesting to me, but it didn't really fit in the book, and it sort of slowed things down, and I'd get rid of that. At one point, I had another minister show up as a secondary villain, but it was very distracting from the real plot, and very hard to justify why a minister would be in the Republic, and so I ended up cutting her. But I don't regret cutting those things. I think it's better for them being cut.
Definitely, it was a very well balanced book, so I don't think very solid choice.
Yeah, I feel like when you have to kill your darlings, it's usually sentences and it's the pretty prose that you've written that you think that doesn't work. But when your darling is a character, it does feel really brutal, right? It's like oh no, I killed them. It's like, yeah.
It's like, sorry girl, you're interesting, just not here.
Not yet.
Yeah, you have to treat them nicely. You have to be like, no, it's okay. You are still a good character. I promise. I'll use you in a short story.
Exactly. Where? So just go into this little other document that says cut scenes, and then you can live quietly on the hard drive.
I like how you've kept some of them on your website as well, and you release them from time to time.
Yeah, I'll release a few for Unkillable Princess after it comes out. They're much shorter than the Immortality Thief ones, because Immortality Thief was a much longer book originally, and Unkillable Princess didn't have the same kind of volume cut out of it. So, but there will be a few.
It is a lovely chunk.
The Unkillable. That's the quote of the interview so far. It's a lovely chunk. Thank you, Eleni.
I mean, look at it. It's beautiful.
It is a lovely chunk. The Unkillable Princess itself is a title that is taken from a board game, and
Oh,
that
yes.
speaks to my heart, Taran. Have you figured out how to play this board game, and when can we play it?
I pictured it as like space chess. Yes, it's like space chess. You know how in Star Trek they'd have like normal board games, except they'd throw in like a deconstructed like hair dryer or something in a cryptic way. That was how I was picturing the board game Unkillable Princess. I didn't actually work out the rules aside from the important one, which is that the princess piece is unkillable, and if you catch her, you end the game. So. Because I actually came up with that title before I came up with the board game. And I love that title, and I assumed it would be changed before publication. And apparently other people liked it too. So I'm actually very excited that I have a book coming out with princess in the title, which is, I really liked unicorns, was a goal of mine. So
it all led to this.
So when everybody gets a chance to read this book, once it's out there and once it's released, and they fall in love with the board game, which they will do, then someone please make the rules for it so that we can play it with Taran. That would be amazing.
And let's create a collectible set too, so we can have it.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we'll start a Kickstarter. Yeah, it's happening right here. It's going to be great.
Kickstart the Unkillable Princess board game. I hope some of the pieces light up. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
now you're talking.
Like Sketcher shoes.
Yeah. You put them down dramatically and they flare. Yeah. Could see that. Yeah.
It would work. It would work so well.
It would work.
Even in the dark. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. So we said that we had Sean completely out of his element with book one, technically, because even though he got to use his linguistics, which was why he was picked for the team in the first place in the spaceship, he was very much not very happy with anything else. And the main quote of that book is Sean go and Sean run.
Yes.
So whereas now we find Sean and team more in his element, because as bad as he's at it, he's still a smuggler at heart, and he has all of his connections and all of these new things to build on. So why don't you tell us more about this change, this shift from book one to book two?
Yeah, I thought it would be, I mean, part of it was just the natural way of things. As soon as I realized that the book had to be set in the Republic, as opposed to an abandoned spaceship, or as opposed to Maria Nova, because Maria Nova is essentially like a closed system. As soon as I realized it had to be set in the Republic, I was like, Sean has lived in and around the Republic for at least about the past 8 years. And he has survived, presumably by the skin of his teeth, but he has survived. So he must have some sort of connections and some sort of familiarity with how to survive in that situation. And once I realized that, I thought, well, it'll be interesting because in the first book, Sean is out of his element, and Indigo and Tamara are actually in their element because they're both very much warriors. But as soon as they show up in the Republic, suddenly Indigo is a stranger in a strange land, who's very much not wanted there. And Tamara is returning to a home that she doesn't necessarily recognize as a person that she doesn't necessarily recognize in herself. So they're sort of uncomfortable, whereas Sean is now comfortable, which is also brings a moment of tension, not just between the characters, because Sean is not the best at explaining why he does the things that he does, but also in Sean, when eventually, of course, his usual methods of survival aren't working anymore. So you get not just the sort of, you get to see him in his element and learn more about him and learn more about Indigo and Tamara by contrast. And you get to have that security be taken away about halfway through the book when he can no longer operate the way he used to.
Yeah, it works really well. Yeah.
There's a lot of touching moments too, especially like very, very important moments where maybe I was expecting not a cliche per se, but the usual sort of turn of events as reactions to certain behaviors from Sean, from the others. And then you did not do that. It would always be a surprise in a good way. Like, oh, we're being mature about this. Oh, this is very nice.
Yes. Yeah. A big part of the book for me is about Sean's mental concept of other people versus how they actually are. And so, of course, the biggest part is he has a memory of his sister who may or may not match the reality of who his sister was. And then with Indigo, he has, on one hand, the man who took everything from him, and on the other hand, his dear friend. And then with Tamara in particular, he has certain things he expects from her. He sort of almost expects her to be an authority figure to him, because she gives off a sort of big sister energy. But that's not necessarily who she is outside of the context in which they met. And so a lot of their interactions, a lot in the beginning, were about surprising Sean's expectations and then his surprise, and then how that connects them more as they go along.
That's so well done.
I love what you're saying about the relationship with the sister. I know that in the acknowledgements you stated that this is, not based upon your relationship with your sisters, but come on, it's kind of a little bit based on that. What do your sisters, or what do you think your sisters will make of the book when they get a chance to read it?
They haven't read it yet. And Molly and Maeve, if you're listening, this has nothing to do with either of you. You're perfect. But I did think, there's a certain deep familiarity you get between siblings, which can sometimes translate into a little bit of roughness, especially in siblings who are close. Like the way that you talk to your siblings is not necessarily the way that you're going to talk to a friend, even a very close friend. And so for Sean and Bridget, they're very close in age. They're much closer in age than I am with either of my sisters, who are younger than me by 3 or 6 years. But Sean and Bridget are Irish twins. They're like barely a year apart. So there's almost more competitiveness between them because they're so close in age. And I thought that juxtaposition was interesting, where they love each other very much, but they are constantly trying to ruin each other's lives. And the way that Sean interprets the relationship after he believes his sister is dead, which is much more gnarled up and less easy.
Understandable. But also the dynamics between Tamara and her own siblings, and the consequence of responsibility and having to be the big sister, and trying, like you said, the way that Sean may view her as a big sister, as well as that sort of authority figure, and her needing the moment to check herself out of that because she does not want to fit into that specific role, which I think will be very, very healing for a lot of big sisters out there.
Yes, I'm also a big sister. For Tamara, it's about her having been in a particular role that's very bounded and very expected of her, and then her trying to escape that in many different ways, but still, adoring the people who put her in that role.
Yeah. I feel in some ways that's kind of like a little bit of the relationship you must have with Sean, because like he's kind of adorable, but also he's very sort of Sean at the same time. So it's like
he's trying his best.
He really is.
With regard to sort of writing in his voice, because it's so distinctive and it's so unique and it's brilliant, is it weird trying to write not in Sean's voice now?
I did start working on a project that is in third person, and it is kind of interesting. It's unrelated to Immortality Thief, and it is kind of interesting because there's things that I sort of rely on with Sean's voice to sort of, if I get into an awkward point in the scene, I can be like, well, anyway, and use Sean's native cadence to sort of elide past things that are boring. For instance, like if you have to move, stage directions, if you just have to move a character from point A to point B, sometimes there's just no interesting way to do that. And with Sean, the interesting way to do that is to just let Sean talk, and then suddenly you're across the room and you're like, my God, please shut up. Okay, great. It's time for the action. You can't really do that without Sean's inner monologue. So that was, I was like, oh, I forgot I had to do that sometimes. But when I first came up with him, it was sort of, he was supposed to be more similar to me personally. And then as the book went on, as I like rewrote Immortality Thief, we got much, much more different. So it has been interesting the way my relationship to him has evolved from like, I'm just having fun, this is my voice, to like, oh my God, okay, you're going to do that? Okay, yeah, sure, fine. Yes.
Like the one editorial note that you showed on your Instagram page at one point shakes Sean vigorously. Yeah. I understand.
Yes.
Everyone who reads Unkillable Princess will understand. But
yes. And you know what? He deserves it. He does.
He does.
So he really does.
Well, about part of your world building, and we mentioned it already, but for those who may not have read book one or who don't know, tell us a little bit more about the light language, because I know you have a guide, or you used to have a guide on your website for it, but how that evolved and how that went into it, because in book one, it's this sort of weird thing, new puzzle that Sean needs to break down, and it's one of the things that he uses to keep his mind busy as things are progressing, and he's trying to keep himself not scared, which works so well. But now that he's cracked it, and he gets to make it his own and use it with Indigo and Tamara. So also I would like, for that evolution, whatever you want to tell us about it, and explain it a little bit for those who don't know the story beforehand.
The light language is, there's a species of, let's call them aliens, called the ministers, who communicate via flashes of light. They all wear like a collar with effectively a fancy light bulb, and then they communicate through almost like Morse code with the lights, except that it's more complicated than that, and it's phrased, not just flashes, but duration and like intensity and color being an important aspect. And I came up with that because the ministers are aliens who exist largely in outer space for most of their lives, and there is no sound in space. So if you want to communicate with someone from a distance, you should probably do it through light, because light doesn't need a medium to transmit through. And from there, I just sort of threw things that I like about languages into that language. It's not a complete conlang, which turned out to be a problem when I was writing Unkillable Princess, and I had to come up with minister terms for things. And I was like, I don't know what kind of phonetics they use for their conlang. And then I had to stop, and then I had to invent some phonetics and make that mildly consistent. So somewhere I do have a sheet of paper that says like what Sean's name would be in flashes and that sort of thing. But I threw things in it that I thought were interesting in languages. Like I watch a lot of Chinese dramas. And back when I could not speak any Chinese, I can speak only a teeny bit now, but like what I would pick up first would be names and titles, because it would be spelled the same as it would be said. And so that's sort of the things that Sean picks up first, is like names and titles and like yes and no, and that sort of thing, which I just thought that was interesting. So
yeah, for language enthusiasts, it was the thing that caught me the most. I was thinking, oh, finally, real showing of how languages work or how translating works. Not just suddenly, oh, the perfect translation from text in our modern language, which makes perfect sense.
There was some drama that I watched. It was an American Taiwanese drama, and it's about an American man who has a Taiwanese family, and the Taiwanese family are like talking in front of him. They're having this like gangster conversation, and it cuts to the American boy's translation, and it's just like random words strung together. And I was like, that is the best That is the best representation of what that's like ever. He's like, mountain, go. Mister. I'm like, that's what Sean's doing. So it creates a whole extra level of challenge for him getting through.
I love sea dramas so much, Taran. You've like ticking all the boxes of like my little geeky guilty pleasures. It's amazing.
Best friends
I was
ever.
so close to being like Hun Hao, just because I've seen so much of it that I know that that's like a legitimate, like very good. It's like it's amazing. So building a little bit on the light language, because I know that obviously certain colors have certain associations. What I was thinking is it would be kind of cool, like if, because you said about what Sean's flashes would be, what Tamara's flashes might be. If you were to give them like their characters a color, like that just sums them up, what color would you give to each of your characters?
What color would I give? Well, indigo, of course, gets indigo because that's the color that he had when Sean met him. I don't think anyone could get violet because violet has very strong associations for Sean that have to do with the minister who he met first, who wore it, who is associated with all these dark, like death and despair things in his head. So nobody could get violet. Tamara would probably get blue, I feel like. And then Sean would get like the lowest. So he'd probably get like orange. I don't know. I don't want to put him at red. I don't want to slam on him too hard, but he'd be down there.
Just because like different colors are different ranks as well. So
exactly. So in degrees of respect. So like they don't have curse words in that language. It's more like what color you're calling someone. If you're calling someone a dog and you're like, you know, using a respectful blue, it's like, oh, my wonderful hound. But if you're calling someone a red dog, then it's more like, you know, you bitch.
You mongrel.
Exactly. You dirty animal. So
I love that sentence that you put where you said something along the lines of they don't have swear words in this language, but the way you said Sean, I think it's the closest it probably is ever gonna be. I thought that was absolutely awesome.
Yes. Yes. Indigo, for someone who doesn't have any swear words natively, he comes real close to cussing at him.
Yeah.
That's a skill right there when a character can bring this much out of another character who's supposedly very calm and collected and just has themselves together.
Yes, and Sean brings a lot of emotion out of Indigo, for sure.
And the reader.
And the
reader is fine. So that was one of the greatest parts of all of your characters showing a different degree of vulnerability, which is important to have because they're no less cool, they're no less badass, or no less efficient when they need to be, Sean aside.
Yes, Sean aside, not counting him.
He stumbles into efficiency.
Occasionally. Yeah.
Occasionally. The two neurons connect properly. But all the others, but they have their own vulnerabilities and they're all like little moments of specific cracks in the veneer.
Yeah.
Which was again paired with a fluff, and that it was just built so well. And it just needs to keep building, I feel. Right?
I hope so. I hope
Correct. So we're taking a lot out of your books because we have been talking a lot. But is there anything in particular that you're hoping that readers will take from these? Not necessarily from only Unkillable Princess, but from the story and the characters.
I hope they really like the characters as much as I like writing them, because for me the characters are the whole appeal behind these books, and I really like writing them, and I really hope that readers like spending time with them. So, including Sean, even Sean.
Sean. They're a great time to spend. I think I already told you this, Taran, before we when we were chatting about getting this set up. But I mean, I literally sat down and in the space of like a couple of sittings, like finished Immortality Thief, and in the space of another couple of sittings, finished Unkillable Princess. It's so addictive because you just love spending time with these characters. It's amazing.
And the pace is so fast.
Yeah. But out of everything that I read, there is one question that I feel like I need the answer to. This is the question that came to me first when I got to the end of the Unkillable Princess, and it's the question that I feel is the one that
everybody will have.
It's we need a proper answer for this. We need a proper answer, Taran.
Think about it very hard.
What's in the blue cocktail?
What's in the what?
What's in the blue cocktail?
Like to make you understand, it came to the point where yesterday I saw a blue cocktail on TV and I was like, oh, the blue cocktail. And the person with me was like, huh? It's a thing.
Yes, so
Honestly,
there is
people are going to read that scene.
There is a part,
and they're going to be like, all they're going to want to know is, I need the recipe. That's all they're going to think, right? What's in it, Taran? What's in it?
What's in it? So this is, we mentioned earlier that there's a part in the book where two characters go and get drunk. And Sean, who's one of those two characters, exclusively orders drinks that are blue. And this is a mistake. You know, this is a classic mistake. If you're at a bar and you order a drink and the only descriptive is the color, this is a deadly cocktail. So what do I think is in this cocktail? Ice, sugar, blue Gatorade, and Bacardi 151.
Ooh,
I like it. I like
potent.
it.
You know,
Potent. I don't
tempted.
know if it tastes any good, but it's potent.
We should have been drinking that through the whole interview. We'd have been like,
I don't think we would have.
I am like Sean. I have the improv of the perverse, so I would try it purely because it sounds inadvisable.
Yes, it does. If you do try it, let us know.
I will let you know.
Please have 999 on standby. So
I will take every precaution.
Especially if you drink like 4 of them, which I believe he does.
I won't get there.
I'm
not a heavy enough drinker for that.
I loved when he was like, have you got anything green? And they're like, no, just keep the blue coming. It's like, I love that. It's so good.
This is
It's like his only requirement is color. I loved it. So good.
It just ties everything well. And especially like the imp of a perverse, aside from it being very relatable to me, I think it relates to a lot of people, that the whole idea of, you know, when you're at a height and you're thinking, what if I jumped? That intrusive thought, that's just Sean.
Yes.
And it connects so well with people.
Yes, exactly. It makes him fun to write for, because, you know, he's not gonna as a character get stuck because he's like, it would be stupid to do this. He's going to be like, it would be stupid to do that. And then the next scene is him doing it. So, which as a writer really takes a lot of labor off me. And I appreciate that from him.
It's the Jack Sparrow school of shenanigans. If it's stupid and it works, and not so stupid.
Exactly. It's true. It's true. It did work. He has the Philosopher's Stone. Spoilers for the Immortality Thief. So
I guess we're drawing to a close, but there's one thing that I like to ask everybody, and is, what's one thing you're always asked, and one thing that you're hoping that someone will ask you?
Oh, something I'm always asked. Well, you didn't actually ask this, but in every interview, you always get asked what was the inspiration for the book, like where did it come from, which is hard because it doesn't always come from one spot. So that's probably the most common question. And something I'd like to be asked. I don't know. I like talking about the character arcs, but we have talked about character arcs. So maybe I just want to be asked, how are you, Taran? Are you okay?
The true how
are you okay, Taran?
Are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay?
All right.
Is your day going fine?
It's okay.
Is the cat okay?
Okay.
The cat is fine. The cat is in prison, in little kitty jail.
There, Joe.
Jess has a question for you, and it's so interesting to me that Jess has picked this up, and I'll tell you why after we've asked it. Okay, so Jess says, did you take any inspiration at all from the Mummy? Every time Benny appeared in the Immortality Thief, all I could hear was, hey Benny, it looks like you're on the wrong side of the river.
So yes and no. I didn't get his name from the Mummy. I don't know where I got his name. I probably picked it out of a hat. But I absolutely got a ton of inspiration from the Mummy. Every tomb raiding story in existence, I think I consumed while writing Immortality Thief. The Mummy for sure. Those are amazing movies. A bunch of Chinese dramas also. But yes, like a ton of the Mummy.
So when I finished, so when I finished reading the Immortality Thief and the Unkillable Princess, I phoned Eleni, and Eleni was like, what did you think? And we were talking about the characters, and I was like, I have to describe Sean as like half Brendan Fraser in The Mummy, half Rachel Weisz, like fused together. He's not an action hero, but he's goofy, right?
Yeah.
And he's not kind of like an
cool.
Egyptologist, you know, but he's got that and I was like, Taran's got to have watched The Mummy, right? And then Jess is like getting the same Mummy vibes. I'm like, this is it's like The Mummy in space is what you've written, Taran. That's how you should be pitching this book.
That is, you're right. I've missed an opportunity. Can we go back to the start of this interview and I'll say,
let's do it. So if you could pitch your book for us, Taran, how would you pitch it? And
in space.
boom, that's it. That's great.
There we go. Everybody's ready. If there were any doubts before, if you love The Mummy, read Immortality Thief.
Well, thank you for joining us, Taran. For anybody who, because obviously the release, it's coming up very soon. It's coming up in February, right?
February 11th in the US and February 13th in the UK.
Awesome. Yeah. So everybody go add it to your wish list, go pre-order it, do whatever you need to get this book, because it's the perfect companion to the Immortality Thief, but it's new and it's fresh and it's awesome and you will love it. And you'll love the characters. If you love the characters in book 1, you'll love them in book 2. For everybody who does go out and buy it and who loves it, Taran, and thinks it's awesome, how can they let you know? Where can they get in touch with you?
Well, you can talk to me on far too many social media platforms. I'm on Instagram as Taran Hunt. I'm on Twitter as Taran Hunt. I'm on Blue Sky as Taran Hunt. I'm also on Tumblr, which is a social media you will never make me leave.
Old.
As Taran Hunt. And I also have a website, taranhunt.com, which has a part where you can send me messages.
And all extra goodies.
Yes, and many things.
Many things to tide you over until hopefully book 3.
Yeah, hopefully.
Is there anything? Do you know anything about it next?
I have not heard anything, and I have no news as of yet. I hope that one day I will have good news.
Which merely means everyone who reads the Immortality Thief and Unkillable Princess, talk about it, tell everyone you know, make them buy it without them making a choice on the matter or having a choice in the matter, and review, and talk about this great book, because we do need more of these people.
I would love to write more.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, please make it happen, guys. Make it happen for Taran. Make it happen for Eleni. Make it happen for me. Make it happen for all of us.
So, Laris, are
thank
you
you, Taran, for being with us. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you.
For
it's been really lovely meeting you. And
yes.
Join us again next time when we'll be chatting to somebody, I'm sure. Perfectly professional ending to the interview. But thank you, Taran, and all the best when it comes to February.
Thank you.
Hey, people will see you too soon again, very soon at a certain event, which, well, has a certain con in the name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, TBRCon. Yeah, you'll see us next at TBRCon together.
Very excited.
Yes,
I'm a little jealous.
So tune in then.
You'll be there too.
I'll be in another panel, though.
You'll be another panel.
I'll be there in spirit for yours.
Same.
We'll just put a little picture of Eleni up.
Yes, exactly.
We'll like they're doing in certain shows these days, like a little cutout of Eleni.
Yes.
With the red carpet.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.